All right, we do have a caller on the line, Marcus, him from Texas, and he said he heard I made a comment about interracial dating / marriage, and he's wondering if Kevon sees some parallels between the discrimination of interracial dating and homophobia in the Black community. But I'll let you expound on that question yourself, Marcus.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for taking my call. I love the show. Like I said, I kind of missed it when Rudy was talking about it, so I may be a little off track. But I wrote, I guess I wrote in the notes or told the call screener that I was cishet because I don't feel like I completely identify with the discrimination specifically Kevon might be experiencing. But I wonder if there's any correlation. I mean, I'm a 50-plus-year-old man. I've been married to my wife now for 25 years. My wife is white, and I'm old enough to have experienced a lot of the very negative and even overt discrimination that comes with dating somebody outside of your race. Specifically and oddly enough, more from Black females, I guess, than Black males. It was always this, oh, look at him. I don't want to repeat the slurs, but
sure, I appreciate
it was a very negative sort of attitude towards dating outside of your race. And I'm happy to say it's gotten a little better, but I'm just wondering, do you see, I don't know if you have any experience with this, but do you see any parallels between, because I kind of feel like discrimination is to an extent discrimination. I mean, it is kind of a unsubstantiated bias against somebody for some reason. So I'm just wondering if you see any, might be able to see any parallels between those two situations.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for your call. Yeah, definitely. I think like I was mentioning a little bit before that, like there's this sort of expectation of like the norm. And if you deviate from that, the norm, I guess, not for all Black people, but for a lot is you're a Black person, you date and marry another Black person. And that's considered like the sort of blueprint, the sort of norm of what you're going to do. Because like white people, there's a lot of what I've run up against a lot, because I try to take people, like I understand that, you know, there's systematic racism and a lot of white people don't like Black people, but I do try at least to take people as individuals. And I've run up a lot against a lot of Black people who are like, no, they're just writing off all white people. So I think that's part of the stigma that's there. It's like, well, we can't date these people because, you know, they're all racist or they're all bad. And it's just, it's considered outside the norm, outside of that sort of, I guess it's standard, what you're supposed to do. I don't know why some people are so geared towards being this sort of standard, like, let's be this stereotype, but it seems like a lot of people, and I suppose it's the same way in a lot of other communities that, you know, this is who we are, this is what we do, you can't deviate, sort of thing. So yeah, there are definitely parallels there.
Yeah, if I could... Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just agreeing. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I would say, as somebody who has both done the interracial dating thing and the gay dating thing, it's yeah, it's pretty similar as far as the discrimination goes, because, well, I mean, really, it's what we were talking about earlier. We were talking about how it's kind of a lot of times in the Black community, a very obviously gay person is kind of like, don't ask, don't tell. So nobody expects to see those people dating anybody. Well, dating anybody of a different gender. But there's always a couple of people, I feel like, who aren't in the loop, that are like, when are you gonna find yourself a nice boy? When are you gonna? And it's like, Grandma, I don't like boys. Like, I don't know what to tell you there. And in the same way that, you know, that same grandma would probably be like, oh, Why are you find a nice brother to date? Why are you dating that white boy? Why would you? It's like the same people, I feel like, are kind of on that, and it is very much a tradition thing. It's a very much like a sticking to your own type of thing. And I get the sense of feeling like, you know, we need to rally together. We only have each other's backs. I get that. But when it gets to the point where you've created these arbitrary rules of what your group is supposed to look like, to the point where you are discriminating against your own because they don't necessarily fit that mold,
Sure.
then you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot.
Well, your question brings up for me, Marcus, the fact that the Obergefell decision that basically effectively legalized gay marriage across the country heavily drew from Loving versus Virginia as precedent. That lawsuit that made it legal, or rather made it illegal, to have discrimination against marriage equality between races was later expanded in a way. And so I guess I'm curious, having had those experiences of being discriminated against for being in an interracial relationship and watching that cultural narrative like slowly get better, whether that gives you maybe a sense of hope when it comes to discrimination against same-sex relationships, or if that feels like too fake of a comparison to draw.
No, I think it's fair. I mean, I've definitely seen over the past 20 years, actually, my wife and I have kind of been, if she heard me say 25, I'd get killed, because it's actually 27, including the pre-married stuff. But
sure,
definitely, when we first got together, it was all kind of this very looking down their noses at us. How dare he go do that? There's plenty of strong sisters that he could be dating. Why is he going out with that person? But I've seen it very much shift into, and I think it has to do a lot with normalizing that sort of a thing. I mean, it's very much, and I'm even seeing it now on television, where it caught me a little by surprise and it kind of snuck up on me. But now I'm seeing a lot of like interracial, in commercials especially, it's interracial families, interracial couples, and it's becoming a normal part of our society. I mean, I'm even seeing, I was watching one of the other shows, and it was like just a furniture store commercial, but at the end of the commercial, it was two gay men talking about, yeah, we went to the store, they had everything I wanted, it was great. And then they ended the commercial kind of on a still shot of these two standing next to each other. They were obviously, well, they were portraying that they were caring for each other. And it seems like the more it gets normalized, I guess the less we get of the more overt discrimination against it. I don't think we're going to get rid of discrimination completely, but
sure.
The more we get rid of it, and I think the more the younger generations are seeing this as a normal part of society, I think that they'll be less apt to pick up some of those biases against ridiculous things, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, let's certainly hope so. It's encouraging to know that you feel like things are getting better, but there's certainly still a lot of work to do here. Rudy, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, you're fine. It piggybacking off of what you said, actually, for every furniture commercial with gay people in it, there's like a Facebook group full of white Christian moms that are like, boycott this company, they're putting out the gay agenda. And that's still very much a thing, surprisingly. I remember there's this Cartoon Network show that I watched when I was a bit younger, and there's
Modern Life?
No, not actually, but Cartoon Network is going especially well with this. But it's called Steven Universe, and like half the characters in the show are alien rocks, and they all are portrayed femininely. They're all voiced by women. They all have a vaguely feminine shape, but the producer of the show is like, they're rocks. I mean, if the rocks are dating each other, it's just rocks. You know, let's not call.
Yeah.
We're not gonna say it's gay. They're rocks, right? But it's like, well, this is obviously pretty gay. But it's like the more of that kind of thing that's coming out, and that was very controversial, but at the end of the day, they're like, they're rocks. We'll let this be on a kid's show. It's fine. Those rocks can kiss. It's fine. No, I mean, seriously, that was a big controversy, and it's silly thinking about it now and saying it the way that I said it, but it's like, this is becoming normalized, and the more I think that some of these companies are kind of afraid to do it because there's always this ridiculous backlash about it from those Facebook mom groups. But at the same time, it's like the more we encourage that kind of representation, the more spread thin those mom groups are going to be trying to fight the whole world changing around them. So it's I even though it's still a controversy, even though it shouldn't be, I think that we're still heading in the right direction.
It's unavoidable. Society tends towards being more liberal and progressive, and companies know this. So, you know.
Yeah. Let the rocks kiss.
It cracks me up just because, as somebody who doesn't watch Steven Universe, but who spends a lot of time talking about feelings to folks in the queer community, it comes up a lot, that show. It's really beloved by a certain subsect of folks, and there's money to be made there. You know, like I don't want to make art entirely about that, but we're talking about TV, right? There's feels like a real opportunity, and hopefully increasingly marketers and everybody else will begin to see that.
Yeah. It's like, hey, there's a whole demographic here that's just dying to be represented. We will buy all your shit if you give it to us. I promise.
All right. I did have one, I guess, other quick follow-up, and I don't want to steal any thunder for later in the show, but specifically for Kevon, is there any, I would like to consider myself an ally, an LGBTQ plus ally. Is there anything specifically to what the show is tonight? Anything I can read, or any reference material, or any recommendations on how I can find out more maybe of what Black Non-Believers is doing in regard to this, and possibly find a way in my own to get involved?
As far as reference, you mean specifically reference material for Black Non-Believers?
For Black Non-Believers, or even towards whatever efforts you guys might be doing for trying to combat this the discrimination that we're talking about tonight.
Well, I can't speak in general, but for Black Non-Believers, I know we are extremely inclusive, and we always go out of our way to make sure that that not only LGBT people know that they're welcome in our groups, but that everyone outside the group knows that we don't discriminate. And we do many events. Well, it's been a while since we've been able to like really meet in person, but back in the before times, I remember doing an entire weekend for Pride Month where we did a gay comedy show on a Friday, and then we did a gay art show on a Sunday, and then we did the legendary New York Gay Pride Parade on the Sunday. So it's a lot of events. So you can go to our website. I think there's a group near you. I don't remember all the groups. Sorry, I mostly remember like New York, Richmond, and DC. But there are a lot of affiliate groups everywhere, and we do a lot of events, and especially during Pride Month, we do Pride events to represent.
Great, and I know we'll be saying this again throughout the show, but that's all at blacknonbelievers.org. People can and find that local group. Awesome.
Yeah, and it'll have a link for the group and for Meetup too.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for the call. Like I said, I love the show, and I'm looking forward to Christy's closing comments because I love that. So anyway,
Yeah.
you guys.
Well, thanks so much. You have a
right.
great night.
All right.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't realized that. I appreciate the call out because I do that, right? Like as soon as we hang up on somebody, I'm like, well, and let me just add one more thing. But you know, just thinking about the struggle for civil rights and how the struggle for queer acceptance is really built on the back of that in a lot of ways. I mean, I already drew that connection between Obergefell v. Hodges and Loving versus Virginia. It makes me wonder if there is any resentment maybe within Black America because we, in a lot of ways, culturally have like moved on, and we oftentimes are talking about gay rights when, to be frank, we've done a very shitty job of closing the chapter and actually achieving equality down racial lines. What can either of y'all tell me about that possible resentment or maybe even just frustration and aggravation that goes along with all of that?
Not to completely derail, but speaking of racial equality, guilty on all counts.
Yeah,
Yay!
sure, fair to say. It's worth bringing up.
One good thing, but that's speaking on that, as a follow-up, I don't mean to completely steamroll you, Kevon, but I just had this whole idea in my head, and if I don't say it now, I'm going to lose it. But a lot of what I have seen in response to, the Chauvin case was like, hey, so this is just one dude. Like, it wasn't a particularly egregious case, but this is happening every day, all the time. Literally, a girl got shot in my own state, in Ohio, by police, and she had called the police for her own protection and got shot by them when they arrived on the scene. Tensions are high within the Black community as far as just trying to protect themselves, trying to advocate for themselves. And I have heard even, like white comedians basically be like, what do gay people have to worry about? Like, Black people are getting shot in the street. You gay people can sit down. And it's like, well, it's not that simple, but I see where you're coming from. From an outsider perspective, maybe it does look tacky for us to be all like, yes, we're here, we're queer. And it's like, yeah, but some of us are out here getting shot and stuff. So that's not great. The civil rights movement isn't over, obviously, but it's not just for racial minorities. There's other minorities that need civil rights, basically.
Sure. Well, and a progressive tide raises all boats, right? Like I'd like to think that, but I do recognize that, as we've been saying, when you exist on the margins and when there's a real scarcity in your experience, that scarcity mentality, that notion that there's just not enough to go around, means that you really hold other people back.
Yeah, two points on that. As you said, it has like things have gone amazingly well for the LGBT community in the past few years. Like, I used to, like, one of the thoughts I used to have is, oh, what if I have a kid and they're gay? Like, what kind of life are they? Are they going to be like picked on? Is it going to be horrible? Now it's like, not so much. It's like, by the time I had a kid, by the time they were old enough to express any sort of real sexuality, I think society would be even more accepting than it is now. So it's not the concern it would have been like a decade ago,
Mm-hmm.
Now there's obviously the ridiculous, transphobia problem, but, hopefully that will also die down in coming years. But also to the second point, I think when you are on the margins, there can be this sort of like, well, you're not suffering as much as we are, kind of mentality. A lot of times when, not to compare, but when I talk about like Black people suffering, sometimes I'll reference like Native Americans because they have, and my point will be like, not that we haven't suffered, we've suffered a lot, but Native Americans really like, they're really not doing well. Like as bad as Black people are doing, they're doing worse. Like their communities have been ravaged. It's not a good thing, and I'll get a lot of pushback from Black people. Like I'm not saying that Black people aren't suffering. I'm just saying we have to recognize that like these are people too, and they're suffering. So there can be a lot of that comparison of well, sure, but that kind of thing.
It's not a struggle competition. We're not trying to say who has it worse. We all have it bad, is the point.
Everybody loses in a suffering Olympics. Yeah, I think that's a fair point.
Yeah, it reminds me of kind of this thing that's come up with the sort of talks about minimum wage legislation in the States. Is, there's college educated people that are like, I really don't want to make the same as somebody flipping burgers. And it's like, then you should probably be making more. Like, you get that, right? It's not that the people flipping burgers don't deserve a living wage. It's that you should probably be making more than just a living wage if you're doing more, right? Like, why you don't take away from somebody else who's trying to get what they need to survive. Just if you think, hey, I should probably be getting more too, advocate for that. Don't stop the people that are trying to get their own stuff.
Yeah.